And, so when it comes to the world, if you're not in charge of the world, somebody else is. So who is that? Who's out there and setting up the stage to step in? That's the event we all need to be watching for. And the September is very, I mean, like what we were talking about in the beginning, something's coming up here in the next 2 weeks. Don't know what's going to happen. Couldn't tell you. Got some ideas, sit around the campfire, have a drink of whiskey. I'll share them with you. But something seems like it's going to happen. If not this year, then next. Another one of those things for homework for the people who want to do it, the confirmation of covenant with many from Daniel, Old Testament, it starts a 7-year period. Well, this thing that they're talking about in the UN, any guesses on how long this little treaty thing is supposed to be? 7 years.
Good afternoon, everyone. Guess who I have with me today? Eden Grow Systems. I have one of the towers sitting right out in the room. We got some plants. Now, the thing that I'm learning is check your seeds to make sure they will germinate versus, we have to change some seeds because even the seeds we put out in our own garden to try to test on how fast it's going to grow in the machine or versus what's going to grow outside, the whole entire batch, none of them sprouted out. Like for the chrysanthemum, for example, that we bought from a supermarket, it was Asian vegetables, and none of them, zero. We had a 0% sprout rate. So I know something was wrong with the seeds. So it's just little things like this. But anyway, Jeff's here with us today. We're going to talk many things, crowdfunding, banking, central bank digital currency, FedNow wallets. And just before we got on the program, a video I'm working on right now for my Patreon crowd, and eventually I'll drip feed some of the info on the Adapt 2030 channel, is I got terms of service upgrade. I got to sign this terms of service thing to upgrade into a Pays wallet. Now, this is the top 13 banks along with subsidiary banks, and eventually it'll be all banks, large and small. So Pays, at least in my opinion, what it looks like, it's a digital wallet. It's not an account. It's a digital wallet. So it's got to be front loaded. So somewhere that transference of your dollar is being uploaded into a digital. And the only one I know right now that's functional within the U.S. banking system is the FedNow accounts. So while we were talking before the show here, and I'll let Jeff explain it, but when I was talking to Mike Adams earlier too, he's like, man, we got to get over onto Signal because my phone's not working. I can't send emails, can't get text messages because he had a Google-less phone. So he can't even use his devices because he's Google free and nothing works on it, even for the most basic of getting text messages. So now we're back to email and encrypted services for communication. So, this is the world we're living in. So Jeff, thanks for joining. And love to hear what your thoughts were after we were talking about, the FedNow accounts and restriction of money movements, along with what you're doing over there at Eden right now.
Yeah, well, thanks again, David, for having me on. As always, it's a pleasure talking to you. I think, everybody, hey, thumbs up, like, subscribe, ring that bell to get notified on his channel. But David, we were talking before the show about the FedNow, the central bank digital currencies. And that's one of the reasons that my business partner, Bart, and I started Eden Grow Systems. I've shared my faith openly with you before, but, when we look at Revelation and we see what's talked about as far as the beast system, and very specifically, you're not going to be able to buy, sell, or trade unless you sign up to get the mark, to have all that. Well, what we're seeing is the foundation for all of these things that the Bible talks about has been laid. The foundation is laid, and now they're starting to frame it up, and put some siding on the house.
You have a choice in today's unstable world. Eat Z-Bugs or plan ahead. Eat Z-Bugs or buy the storable foods. Investing time and thought into creating your emergency food supply is a proactive step towards safeguarding your well-being and your family. With the right food supplies, you can maintain your physical and mental well-being and face any unforeseen event with resilience and strength. HeavensHarvest.com. Use promo code ADAPT and save 15% at checkout. Don't be forced to eat Z-Bugs.
And now on with the video.
And that's one of the reasons we started Eden, is because one of the ways that they're going to come and try to force you into this is to control the food, control your food specifically. And it's like David was talking about for everybody, you know, these terms of service that they're given, it's basically either you say yes, or you just don't get to have whatever the service is. There's no negotiation, there's no compromise. It's just like on your phones, whether you're iPhone or Android, it doesn't matter, or Windows or any of them. When you download an app these days, it says, you know, hey, you get to use this for free, but here's the list of all the stuff that comes with it. And that's, you know, they convince us, they've been kind of conditioning us, I guess you can say, to just say yes to those terms without ever reading them. But, you know, so they get you to just say, yeah. And they're going to try to force everybody over into this way of doing things.
And I look at that too. And no, there's been a lot of crowdfunding lately that's been dissolved. I was just reading an article yesterday. They'd raised something like $90,000, and then nope, can't have the money because you have a different ideology to keep your newspaper up and running. So they were doing a GoFundMe campaign to continue to get funds for their newspaper, but they were ultra left, and still GoFundMe said, nope. You got 90 grand in there, so you can't have any of it. We returned all the money to all the people who donated. So just too bad, and don't ever come here again. So it doesn't matter really. You know, now people are starting to realize. Before it was always like, oh, it's those people over there. They're the bad ones. They're the ones that shouldn't. They're the ones that are getting hit by this. Now it seems
careful what you ask
encompassing, and you know that happens every chapter of history. Such useful idiots that think they're the chosen ones, that nothing will happen, and then in the end, it's a conflagration of everybody all burning at once, where nobody's spared. And it's been like that again and again and again and again. Why would this time be any different?
Yeah, no, I mean, David, you're exactly right. Is that the people, if I wish people, I was trying to think of what to call some of my videos, because I've been trying to post on YouTube more. And one of them is, where did all the normal people go? And by normal, I mean normal people on the left, normal people on the right, you know, regardless of your politics. Is normal people would sit and they would step back and they would see the situation you're talking about. So you basically, just because your party is in power right now, doesn't mean that what you're giving them as authority is going to be a good thing in the long haul. And people are getting trapped in that. And it's a great thing for people to remember. You really need to step back and think, hey, if these policies were in place and my enemy was in office, you know, would I be okay with it? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't be voting for that policy. That's just how our republic is supposed to work, and people are forgetting that. But you mentioned the GoFundMes, the Kickstarters, and stuff like that. You know, at Eden, we're getting ready to do a big crowdfund. In fact, I've been announcing it on YouTube and Twitter, and trying to get back into all these social medias. I was ruminating with you on that. You know, Facebook is so hard, and dealing with all the social media stuff these days is difficult as a business. I'm not on there as an individual, but as a business I am. And we're going to be doing something different. We're actually doing what's called a regulated crowdfund. So it's not GoFundMe, it's not Kickstarter, and it's not essentially like a donation like those sites are. You know, hey, if you go to Kickstarter and you put $10 in, you know, they might send you a keychain or something, but that's all you get out of the deal. For us, what we're doing is this Reg CF, regulated crowdfund, is actually sponsored by the SEC. So I've had to go through background checks. My company is going through third-party audits and reviews, and they're making sure that we're all legit and above board folks, that, you know, they don't take the money. And we're actually going to be offering it. It's the last time that we'll be able to give stock in Eden to everyday folks. This is actually, it's very unique in the investment circles. Is normally you don't get to invest unless you're a certified investor. And the reason for that is there've been so many people that have taken advantage of, think of like little old grandmas, you know, who, like, somebody calls them, says, you should invest $100,000, you know, and then she's like, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm going to do that. But, you know, then they take her to the cleaners. So the SEC made you have to be a certified investor, which means you have so much net worth and all this stuff. Well, the Reg CF allows anybody to come in. They still go through the background checks. So they do all the stuff that normally a certified investor would do as part of their due diligence. They do it to us. And then they make it available through a compliance company. And they say, hey, yeah, this company is above board, and we're going to do this crowdfund. So unlike those other ones where they take your money away, this one's like totally above board. Yeah, it doesn't matter what your politics or any of those things are, because you're going out, essentially you're becoming certified that the government says you can invest in us. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get investment to go to the next level. Because David, I mean, you were overseas for a while, but it is so hard to compete with China. I mean, as an American company trying to compete with Chinese, whatever you want to call it, the Chinese market is so lopsided that when I'm paying, even an 18-year-old right out of high school, I'm paying him, over $15 an hour, because that's what by the state I'm obligated to do. I can't compete with $1 an hour. So how do I do that? And the way that we've been doing is we've been fighting the fight. We got a good product. And the problem that we have with the product, the one problem I have with the product right now is that it's expensive to build. We use real aluminum. We're not just using plastics. We've got really solid equipment that's going to last for over 10 years. Some of the folks that are out there, they do what's called, and you all have seen it, especially if you're iPhone users, it's called design for obsolescence. And what that is a philosophy that they actually design the thing to wear out. Right. So you get your iPhone for 2 years and then they want you to go buy another one. So what you start seeing is they'll have it where its performance starts to go off. Well, it's not just iPhone, it's everything, but we're not going with that route. We're trying to actually design something that's going to last a really, really long time. We've done that. So we're using good materials, good parts, good components, American labor, not outsourcing overseas. I would outsource overseas like Vietnam or the Philippines, but I'm not going to China. I'm against. Philosophically, I disagree. Morally, I disagree with what's happening over in China. So we're trying to get everything that we've ever bought from China. We're trying to get it out of there, but that just keeps driving the cost up. And then being a startup while you have inflation, I mean, you have a global pandemic and all these things. Right now, it's really hard to be a startup. So David, I just thank you to even be able to come on and just tell my story. Quite honestly, it's like, if anybody's out there and you have respect for the small businessman or woman, I mean, we are going through hell right now, trying to get things going, get them up and running. And we're just one company. But what we're trying to do is focus on the thing that we think they're going to attack, which is food. They're going to get it to where eventually they know every single thing you buy. We already see rumblings of it. They're seeing them say that they're not going to do something, and then they do it. When it comes to food, it's the same thing. They're putting in place policies, procedures, technology that will allow them to control food. They're saying they're not going to, shut you down when you've had your allotment of meat. But then they're moving towards that. Or, hey, you didn't buy the right things, so we're going to turn off your money at the store. They say they're not going to do that, but then they will do that. I'm all about us getting along, but I'm seeing red flags of very large bureaucratic organizations that do not have representation of the people in them, essentially long-term bureaucrats. And I'm extremely worried about things as far as that goes. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that area?
Food will be currency. We keep seeing these plans play out, and each time it plays out, you have less access to food. They're saying 3% inflation in America, and I'm laughing at that. That's impossible. That they're saying 3% US inflation. Like, who's coming up with these numbers? I mean, what are you talking about? Like a brick somewhere made in oh wait, the concrete's going up 20%. So you can't, something as simple as like just a brick that you would buy for your house or whatever, 3% up. No, concrete's going up more than that. There's really nothing I can even think of so rudimentary, so basic that hasn't gone up any more than 3%. I think there's nothing. So these kind of numbers that keep coming out and trying to build it up like, oh, with this, that, and the other. And, don't worry, your life's pretty good. People are living paycheck to paycheck. You got people crying in supermarkets because they see these prices. They know that they can't afford enough food for their families. I feel so bad, Like, in America, we used to have one of the lowest costs for food in the entire planet for your percentage of what you spent on your earnings per month or per week or 2 weeks, biweekly, whatever you look at. But that has just so far gone now. Before, people were just like, I can't believe you only pay 6% of your entire wages for food. Over in Pakistan, it was 45%. And that was a few years back when me and Mike Adams were talking about that. And he's like, yeah, we only pay 6%. And then it was creeping up and it was 10% for our food. And we were talking about, like, what happens to somewhere in Pakistan where they're already spending 45% on food, and food prices are intended or forecast to double again from where they sit now within the next 12 months or under. And then you start to put all these shipping delays that are out offshore off the Panama Canal. And now you're trying to mix in all these international organizations to try to oversee supply chains, medicine, manufacturing, politics, money, and energy to try to evenly distribute it across the planet. You can't even do that with your own local governments across the planet and causing disruption. So this whole thing, the only thing I can possibly see why they want to move so quickly to a unified global response is what I've been talking about on this Adapt 2030 channel. We are at that last 1 year before there's such massive changes in terms of earth changes that our civilization in itself is going to be, well, not functional in terms of this globalized thing that we've been used to. Regionally, yes. Continents, yes, but the globalization aspects, no. So in order to try to control the inevitable downward spiral and try to control it versus letting it, free fall speed like the towers did in 9/11, a little more controlled demolition to, hit that on the way down. So I think that's why this global governance thing is being pushed so hard. I really think, because I'll say one last thing, Jeff. If you go there's a website, it's called planetstoday.com. One single function there, it just shows the electromagnetic connectivity between the planets as they're going around their orbits in our solar system. It's such the most basic program. But when you look at it, September 11th, 12th, 13th, somewhere around there, it looks like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are all going to connect electromagnetically and start that secondary field of it's going to be a perturbation or anomaly or whatever kind of term you want to put into that. But it begins here in just a few more days. And then it's going to really strengthen to its highest intensity, October 23rd, somewhere there in 2024, about another year and plus month from now. But I can't believe that all these moves for the globalization are all coming in at the same timelines, that electromagnetic disruptions in our solar system are inbound on the same exact timeline to the same exact year. You can't tell me that's just like a statistical probability of that being anything organic.
There's another one, David, I'll add. And, for the believers that are out there, both Jews and Christian, there's a feast that is known to the Jews, especially, but the Christians who are studying their Bible will know it as well. It's called the Feast of Trumpets. And for us on the side of faith, we're sitting there watching it. It happens at the exact same time, both years. So you have 2023, I think it's September 15th through the 17th this year. And then next year, it'll be very close to it depends. It's actually very interesting. A little Bible study for people, or a little homework for people, I'll say, is go look up the other name of the Feast of Trumpets. I'll give you a hint. It's called the Feast that Nobody Knows the Day or Hour of. That's how the Jews reference it originally. Now go study your Bible in Revelation and Matthew, and I think there's one other one, Thessalonians, I think. And you'll see what Paul, Jesus, and the revelation of Christ say about the day and hour that nobody knows. That's a little homework for folks. You go figure it out. But anyway, I didn't know about what you're talking about with the alignment. And, you and I have talked before online and offline about, the electromagnetic universe, electroflow. I've recently discovered grounding, and it's had a profound effect on me. My inflammation is down. I had a bum wrist that was sprained, and you get older, and you don't heal as much. I'll be quick on this, and same with tennis elbow, just months. I mean, like 6 months, half a year, and it won't heal. We got some grounding blankets, been sleeping on them for about a week now, go outside, de-stressing by walking barefoot. And it's making a huge impact in my life. I'm measuring my stress, and I'm going out and I'm doing these things that to me seemed woo-woo, but what it's really saying is that electricity, it's not what we think. I'm an engineer, I've gone through my electrical engineering course. I've done all those things, but there's something weird going on that's not talked about in the books, but normal people, they start to understand it. And And when we look at the electrical universe, when we look at the things like what you're saying on this site, there's something going on with respect to alignment of electrical currents and how they impact humans. There is something there. And like I said, it was woo-woo when I first started, but you can't argue with results. It makes a big difference. So there's something there. And now so back to what you're saying is, you got all these planets aligning. There's electromagnetic flow that's occurring there. You got the sun is just pumping out this huge field, and then you've got us here, and now you've got this confluence. Everything's coming together at these certain dates. And what does it mean? I don't know. And the people who are skeptics would be quick to say, people like you, Jeff, you've been saying this for a long time. Yep, that's true. But something's going on, right? I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that, David. I just wanted to jump in on that electric stuff there.
Well, no, you gotta, and I talked till I'm blue in the face about this is, this frequency change, electromagnetic current change between our sun and then those outer planets there that are, going to be looping in on themselves. And you have to think about the resonance field on the human brain and how that is going to disrupt thought or cause different emotional changes in people as we go through these next years. And again, it's all about having the control and through those hundreds of years of psychological study on stimulus versus output, and what stimulus input into a human environment. And they pretty much know every possible combination of what a human will do when they have a certain amount of stimulus, how they're going to respond, what kind of emotions they'll have, what kind of frequency is going to come off of them. So knowing something that would come up that would be disruptive to that, what you consider hard science, that there's going to be something in there that doesn't really match any longer, you would want to control that. And again, another thing that they found through all these experiments is hunger is the only thing that doesn't fit with their stimulus models. So you come into a hungry planet, most every single response is already, they're down to the nth degree of what the human being will do once there's a certain stimulus implied. The one thing that goes against that, hunger, makes people do strange things, and it kind of throws out their results a little bit. Well, actually a lot bit. But then again, what I'm seeing here is something that's never been discussed or rarely is discussed is, except the rat experiments they did with magnetic fields and depleting magnetic fields and how rats behaved in their colonies when the magnetic field was decreased. So if we go with any, like this, you're going to see massive disruptions in the way society is structured, the way that people behave, the way that morals are or are not based on magnetic field changes. And I kind of leave it there because, I think the only reason that global governance is trying to grab such a heavy hand right now and have, all their subsidiaries, otherwise known as nations, come out and try to control the citizenry more is because these field changes coming up that are beginning now. So if you're starting to feel a bit strange, just understand it's electromagnetic. It's not you because of something you're doing or the foods you're consuming. Although, if you're pretty, like you say, level-headed and you're out there grounding that millivolt charge, etc. There's something magnificent which should be celebrated. We should be, standing every day, giving thanks, like, oh, I'm so glad this cycle is repeating itself. It's allowing us to do this, X, Y, and Z. But you see the world we live in now, where it's just fear, 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 instead of welcoming this cycle with open arms. And we sit here at the precipice, literally just days away from this second magnetic field starting. Now, it's not going to be as intense, but once we get into this real intensity in 2024, you got to think, be the world government or governments of the world, how would you control this? Massive earth changes are coming in to disrupt a bit of infrastructure. And then the human domain is also going to be disrupted by these same magnetic field changes. So if you're in a global governance structure and, top-down approach, how would you control this? So you still have the power, access to the monetary system and control of that after we exit out of this and things return, quote unquote, to sort of normal. There's a lot of answers I don't have, but I do see the general trend moving, and I see a lot of governments moving with the same trends I had on electromagnetism and planetary geometry, and the same cycles seem to be repeating, and governments are going lockstep with all this. They seem to know a lot about cycles that they're not giving out to the public. And I'll leave that there. I could go on for days about this subject.
I know you can.
I won't. I'll stop.
Yeah. No, that's what the channel's for. So you can go over those things. There's a lot of, what I'm starting to understand, there's a lot of stuff that we've been told that isn't, I mean, it's like the Matrix, red pill in it, whatever you want to say, but there's a lot of stuff that we've been led to believe that isn't necessarily true, or it's partially true. Good lies are based on, almost 90% truth. So there's a lot of stuff out there that a little bit of tweaking takes you away from the bullseye, I'll put it that way. And what I'm seeing is there's a lot of folks that are waking up to that. They're seeing that what's being said isn't really what's going on, and whether they're left or right, there's a lot of good people out there that are starting to understand that there is more happening. And again, back to that's why we started Eden, is to help people, right? We believe as Christians at Eden that the times that we're in are known as the end times, and that we've entered those. And what has been told to us as far as a pattern that we're going to see is famine. And that's something that was very passionate on my heart, very heavy on my heart. And, as I've shared with you before, I was sitting there one night, 13 years ago, whatever it is now, and we were praying, giving thanks. And all of a sudden I heard, I was telling God, hey, thank you for this food, and please help provide food to those who don't have any. And I heard him say, why don't you go do something about it? And so I did. I partnered up with my business partner, Bart. We got Eden going, and now we're, taking these towers to market, and we're doing this crowd fund so we can get money, so that we can take it to the next level, get more output. Instead of having to wait 3 months for a tower, we want to get it down to just a few days. Instead of having our towers be, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on which one, we want to get it down to, less than $1,000. So it's competing with like a refrigerator. And I'll tell you, David, I was putting this in some of my video content is, everybody has a TV, everybody has a refrigerator. Someday, I'm telling y'all, you will have something that grows your own food. Now, you could be ahead of that, or you can be behind it and react. But I'm telling you all right now, the way that things are going, you will eventually have something in your house because you have to, not because someone tells you to, but because you want to, because you need to. You're going to need something, even if it's in a windowsill, on your back porch, in an apartment, in the window, whatever, or a garden. Everybody's going to be growing their own food again. We're seeing it. We're seeing the quality of food in American markets drop off. We're seeing the availability of food in the American markets drop off. And we're seeing the cost of food go up and up and up and up. I mean, you've done a report on that. You showed the graph, I think it was from FAO or, one of the United Nations sites, it was like, boom. It just keeps going up and up and up. It ain't going to stop. It's going to keep going up, and they're going to force people onto food stamps, and get your daily rations, get your handouts. So what we're trying to do at Eden, and why we're asking people to go to our website and sign up, we actually have 3 things we're asking for, because it's tough times. We're asking people to pray for us, because that's super powerful. I mean, if everybody on this message would just take a moment to say, Lord, please help, Eden Grow Systems. Or maybe you're not a believer. Maybe you just, turn to the universe and say, hey, can you throw some juju, some good positive vibes over to Eden and help them out, because they're trying to do good things. That's super powerful. 2, they can share your message here. Go to our website. I'm trying to blast stuff out on social media right now, and I need help sharing. And the last thing is you can pledge. You can pledge to support us on Reg CF, in which case we'll send you all the notifications so that when we go live, you'll get notified of where to go. And the minimum investment is $500. So that's what we're asking for help. David, you've been amazing. Just, being able to test out the tower, give us feedback. You had some issues there at the beginning. You gave us feedback on that. We've updated our processes, our procedures, our quality checks. As we get towers out, people are giving us feedback. We keep making them better. And I've got a super secret, was it triple top secret probation kind of GS-15 classified project that we're working on already for cost reduction. But we just need to be able to get, the money in the bank to be able to allow us to go full tilt boogie here. So,
yeah, thanks for coming on and enjoying the mind back and forth here, because again, how does that bring us up even to thinking about prepping on all this? Well, it's going to be running on electricity. So with that being said, for the cost of a refrigerator, you can get a 2 kilowatt system, inverter generator. So with solar panels that you can recharge that system with, that you don't have to burn gasoline, like the inverter generator, a Honda 2200i, great. And one tank is 3/4 of a gallon. You get 8 hours of burn time out of that, and extend that if you go to 25% on that, if on the runtime. But you got to think about the electricity needs, and running on LEDs, and then the pump only running, a couple minutes every single hour. I mean, that's easily accomplished. And another thing that you'll need with that same system, for example, like an EcoFlow, or there's a Goal Zero, and what's another Jackery?
Patriots,
that's another brand.
Yeah, the batteries.
Yeah. Yep. How are you going to power your devices to even have communication? How are you going to have your Starlink up? How are you going to have your ham radio, your marine radio, your just yellow walkie-talkies that they use at job sites kind of radios? How are you going to have any of that powered up so you can communicate with the outside world? But at the same time, these grow systems are running very little power. So if you're thinking about preps in order of like 1, 2, 3, you're definitely going to need some sort of solar panel recharging battery backup. So you can indefinitely have a power supply to be able to charge all those devices, so you can at least have your communications up and understand what's going on in the world around you. And then also that overflow of power would allow you to then power these grow systems indoor. And, those Mars Hydro lights that are included with that, because we bought a couple systems of lights ourselves, because we had created our own grow tower last year doing microgreens in the wintertime in our house. But we used solar panels also, and we were drawing less than 400 watts off those things. And we had a whole stack, 8 layers deep. It's doable, but you're going to need some power also in that. So, this does kind of dovetail into just general preparedness. You're going to have batteries, battery backup, something that you can charge off solar. And then also, have a generator that you can run occasionally with fuels, because if you run out of, and if the sun's not shining for like a week, you're not going to be able to charge much. So to have that actual power supply to be able to plug in to then, get those batteries full again, you wouldn't have to charge it forever either. So I'm trying to think of double looping, triple looping backups to systems. Yep. And, that's just at the very basic, that you're going to have to think about moving forward. You need the radios. You're going to need grow lights. You're going to have to do a lot of things, because I'm here in East Tennessee. It's, grow zone 7A, and it considered like a very, middle of the road, nice weather, hardly any, winter's only 3 months long. You can get the autumn garden in, you can start in the spring garden right away. But that 3 months of no food, 3 months, no grow. You got to have a plan moving forward. It's going to get dicey, and food's going to double again. I'm sorry. And that's it, Jeff. I'll let you go.
No, I was going to say, you're totally right. Growing food is a skill. And a lot of people, we think like, oh, hey, it's going to be super easy. All you need is dirt, seed, and sunlight and water, and everything's going to happen. And like, yeah, exactly. And if you have ground already and you haven't started preparing, or if you haven't started learning, you get on it. Your pest, your disease, what you have locally, what your conditions are like. We planted fruit trees. I wish we would have done it, 10 years ago when we first got into our home. But what we're seeing is, one late frost and your fruit tree for the year is done. It just, all the blossoms drop off and you're done. There's nothing else you can do about it at that point. And growing food, that's super important. That's independence, freedom. When you don't have to turn to somebody else to say, please, sir, may I have some more? Like, when you can get past that point and have your own food, that's when you start experiencing freedom. Now, the difficulty, the trade is, it's work, right? You have to get up off your lazy ass and go do something about it. No one's going to be sitting there. And if you're one of those people who just wants to sit on your ass and like have a handout, well, you need to wake up because this is going to get tough, man. And we're all going to have to start working harder. So what we try to do is create a system, 5 minutes a day. That's all you got to spend with it. You get to have the rest of your life all day long, but 5 minutes, we need to come by the tower, check the nozzles, make sure everything's fine, make sure there's water in it, and that's it. Computer does everything else. You do need power, like David is saying, but it's very little power. 5 to 7 amps at 120 volts is what you need when the lights are all on, and they're only on for 12 hours a day, maybe 16.
A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. That's why we must steer our own future. For the last 10,000 years at least, gold has rarely suffered from economic and political crises, as it has always been a stable. Gold is perceived as a symbol of wealth, power, and majesty. Gold has had an exalted position throughout the ages as a highly coveted, even worshipped material. That's why most every major civilization has collected and saved gold. Gold has maintained its worth and usefulness as currency throughout time and will continue to do so. Gold has an important economic role as a means of exchange should currency collapse, insurance that will protect you and your families against financial turmoil of any kind. ITM Trading is a precious metals company that has been in business for over 27 plus years, with a mission to educate and empower individuals to hedge against inflation, mitigate financial risk, and prepare for the Great Reset. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call, 866-834-1422, 866-834-1422.
So, and then it goes into superpower saving mode. We even have an emergency pump that comes with it, a foot pump that you can plumb into the system. So if you're out of power for more than 8 hours, because these towers can last 8 hours without water, and it's just the plants will wilt a little, but as soon as you get that water back on, they'll all pop back up. Certainly not the best thing in the world you don't want to happen, but you can keep them alive. Your food can stay there, and you just have to come out and hit that foot pump, once an hour, and you'll get some water on them and keep them going until the power comes back. But decentralization is the key thing in your preps, right? Don't just think of a large battery backup for your house. Those things are ridiculously expensive. Think like what David's talking about, these small little portable units that you could have where your Starlink is connected, where your computers are connected, and where you're using stuff throughout the day. Plug those batteries in there, and then kick your generator on at night when you're like cooking your big meals and you need your oven or your stove or your refrigerator or your freezer to keep things cool, and then recharge everything right then. That's a great way to do things. It's kind of how I'm set up here. I definitely recommend it. I need more batteries. But when the power goes out, I got my computer on a battery backup system, so it doesn't shut off. And I can plug Starlink right into it, and I can run for about an hour. And then I've got to have power. But I think those are definitely preps that people should be doing. And
yeah, thanks. And when you say working, it's me doing the gardens. We have 3 different gardens out here right now, and the raspberries and all the animals. So, part of the day, you might think it's work, but I enjoy it, going around and getting, half of a colander full of tomatoes as a harvest on cherry tomatoes. And then you look and you go, whoa, there's still, I didn't even think I'd make a dent into that whole thing. And you're like, you're looking at endless food for months and months and months. And it's kind of enjoyable to watch the things grow up. And knowing that you can do it, because once you can do it the first time, it's twice as easy the second time, because then you can replicate. And once you get those beds in, and once you do that first year turnover, then to add the compost and add all that stuff in during the winter to get it to roll in is like so much easier than, getting out your 2x6s or 2x8s and cutting them and screwing them together and all these things, filling up the beds with sticks and soil and, compost and thing. But it's an art form. It's a skill. And if you know how to do it, you can go from zero to food production and literally just, if you know how to do lettuces and microgreens and you put those beds out, literally within days, you're going to see your green sprouts come. If you were working with people, like we have this area on the side of the house, and we're like, okay, well, we wanted to fence it off anyway. We didn't know, what we wanted to keep in there. And we're like, why don't we just keep the animals out and we'll make a garden bed out of it. Took a couple hours. With my 4x4 to be able, I got a specialized set of plows and different kind of implements that you can put on the back. So we ripped that area up, got it all leveled out, threw a bunch of, tarp in there. It was it's a weed blocking tarp, a little bit thicker than the regular weed block you get. Set up our beds, filled them all up with the stuff we had around the farm, from the forest hummus to, the compost that we have in the back and different kind of thing. And, a good 1.5 feet deep. And then we put our seeds in the following day, and within 7 days or so, it was already coming up. And you can get food up and running that fast. And we got 5 extra beds. They're 12 feet long and 4 feet wide, so you can reach over from both sides. And we put those out in a matter of just days. So we've done it once, twice, 3 times. It gets faster every time you do it. And go out on a weekend and try to join a weekend gardening club or a community farm or something, or community gardens in your neighborhoods or areas. because that's the fastest way you're going to learn is like just getting your hands in the soil. You could watch like 50 videos, but until you do it and realize, oh, that thing's not square. Oh, that thing's not level. Oh, that's not going to, until you get all those mistakes under your belt. And believe me, how many mistakes I made more mistakes learning what I did than I've done things correctly. But the things that I did correctly after all the mistakes, those mistakes made me and taught me, I got a free education on what not to do. Now, I can gravitate towards doing something more efficiently, just like you with the towers. Like, how many mistakes did you make, or how many tweaks or twists or bends or thing, when you were doing the tower compared to the finished product now, where you can do it with your eyes closed pretty much. It's practice, repetition, practice. Make those mistakes. Don't be afraid. Actually embrace the mistake, because you learn so much from it. Failure. You got to do it. You got to get your hands dirty to do it.
Yeah, no, failure is the greatest teacher, and everything you just said is spot on. That's why I was referencing, if people are on their lazy asses right now and they're not getting up and moving, they need to hear everything David just said. Is you really got to get going here, because these things take time to learn. Now, I will say that's one of the things that was a heavy design requirement in the tower, is that a learning curve needed to go from this to this. So getting the right seeds is good, but we've actually set up a concierge service where people can call us, be like, hey, we got problems, what can we do? And we'll help you out the whole time. But basically, it's get the seed, put it in the cup, put it in the tower, turn it on, and go. And then if you're doing, extra special stuff, you might need some extra help there. But that learning curve is really a big deal. So like our instruction manual that we send, it's a real tool. You actually need to read the manual, because it'll tell you, what to do in there. And we've gone through all those failures that David's talking about, and we've put together the solution that you can come in and, not have to know how to do all this stuff, because the system is going to know how and is going to help you out. It's what I call the right use of technology, right? I mean, technology gets good and bad rap. Some people think it's going to be like AI savior, and other people like it's going to AI destroyer. Well, it's technology is based on what the person holding it. It does what the person holding it wants to do. A fork can be used for eating, or it could be used for stabbing as a good way. So when it comes to technology, we believe we've used it correctly on these towers to help people out, be able to remotely monitor the system. So you can, when you're growing food, you can't go anywhere really. Or raising animals, they call it animal husbandry for a reason, because you're married to it. You got to be there. You got to feed them. I mean, Alicia and we're trying to get out of town here and go see some family, and we've got to have animal sitters, that come and, take care of the animals so that we can leave. Well, we wanted the tower, gardening is the same thing. If you're not there to water it and do all that stuff, if you haven't invested all the money to have all the automation stuff, well, that's what we put in the tower was, hey, get it. And yeah, you can leave. You can leave for a week. You can leave for 2 weeks. Just make sure it has water and nutrients, and you can monitor it remotely if that's what you want to do. So you can go on vacation. You could go out to your recital for your kids. You can go to gymnastics or go to softball on the Sunday, or be in the fire department, or whatever you're doing. You're going to come back. Your food's still going to be there. You don't have to be on it all the time. So that was one of the key things you talk about, those lessons learned. Like, can you imagine how much time it took us to figure out all those lessons so that we can get it in there? I mean, that's worth something. And that's why we're asking for the investment, is we've learned those things. Now we got to go to the next step here. We got to get this out to people and help them out. So again, thanks for having me on. And people can go, pray, they can share, or the pledge. If they want to pledge, just go to eatandgrowsystems.com/RegCF. That's REGCF, Romeo Echo Golf, Charlie Foxtrot for the military folks. So thanks again for having me on, David. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it does seem that the world is a Charlie Foxtrot as we speak.
It is a Charlie Foxtrot. Yeah. And it's about to go tango uniform.
Yeah, your animals, and I understand why people who live in suburbia, that transmutation from what we all grew our own food with my grandparents and stuff after World War II, moved into suburbia, backyards, no gardens, no animals. Now we can take holidays, just have somebody house sit or whatever, maybe with a dog. Now you can put it in a kennel, or a cat in a kennel, whatever, overnight or for a week.
Yep.
But you come out, you got sheep, you got chickens, you got whatever, goats and turkeys and geese. You're not putting those in a kennel. So like, just look how society had shifted in its own right, just from having that responsibility where you could not really leave home and take holidays, because holidaying wasn't a thing except for the uber rich back in the 1930s and 40s. You know, and then finally, once we got into suburbia and got away from that whole animal husbandry and having gardens, and notice how cleverly that was done.
Yep.
We went from a full 40 to 50% of everything needed in an American home was grown or raised on the farm or in the house. And they've, over that time, completely switched you away. And why would you want to waste your time? You can just get it at the supermarket super cheap. Now, it used to be that way until just a few years ago. But now look what's happened. Nobody has that. Barely anybody knows how to do that. And most people on my channel do know how to do a bit of gardening or are master gardeners or can teach others. But a majority of the populace does not know how to. And, that was designed on purpose, that ease of lifestyle. So the pendulum's actually going to start swinging back real heavy here, where you're going to need to have full everything back at your house again. You're going to starve. It's really going to be that simple. And I'm just really wondering where this rollover point is to take us out of the conversation. I'll let you respond. I'm wondering where the rollover point is going to be, where, people have gardens and those that don't, to the point where food, again, is supposed to, that came off Zero Hedge today. Food is projected, this is from the United Nations, from the FAO, since you referenced them earlier, to double again in the next 12 months. Now, if you're talking about people breaking down and crying in the supermarket in our Western world in the United States because they can't afford to feed their family, and when they see the prices, they actually go to tears, what is a doubling of the food price going to do? So there's going to be this rollover of people are going to really start taking, matters in their own hands, start gardening, etc. There's going to be that lag time where there's going to be not a lot of people ready. They won't to. So I'm just, seeing how this is going to rip. This is definitely going to rip some threads of society going this direction here. When food doubles, we're coming into winter. People can't really grow anything outdoors. And you're going to watch these threads just start to fray a little bit until that next year. And maybe that would be the rollover year. Indoor, outdoor, your choice, Charlie Foxtrot.
I think there's an event coming. Don't know what it is, but the way that everything's set up and positioned, and also bringing in my faith and what the Bible says about the end, is it seems like there's going to be a major event that occurs that really pushes people over the edge. Essentially, it breaks the spirit. I don't know what it is. I have some guesses, but there's going to be something that radically changes that allows the foundation and the structure of this beast system, as I call it, that's been put in place that enables it, right? Because most people don't want to have centralized control like this. Most people are, no, I'm going to keep it apart, keep the power separated, don't want it all in one spot. So what would have to happen to get people to really just give up everything and be like, yes, control us, have it, safety, security, this is all that matters, give us our food, balance everything out, like really walking into this thing. There has to be some form of an event that triggers it. And it seems like it's all been set up for that. I mean, the world right now, I think I was watching a YouTube channel. I think it was Nelson Waters. I think it was his channel, but he was somebody anyway, was talking about how the world is ripe for a savior right now. I mean, look, who's leading the world? And it used to be United States. I mean, it's not anymore, and I'm a former military veteran, proud of my service, proud of the service of many millions of other people who have come before me and are still serving. But we're not the leaders anymore. Who is? And I learned this when I was, it was actually a Boeing training class I went to. If you're not in charge of your program, somebody else is. And, so when it comes to the world, if you're not in charge of the world, somebody else is. So who is that? Who's out there and setting up the stage to step in? That's the event we all need to be watching for. And the September is very, like what we were talking about in the beginning, something's coming up here in the next 2 weeks. Don't know what's going to happen. Couldn't tell you. Got some ideas, sit around the campfire, have a drink of whiskey. I'll share them with you. But something seems like it's going to happen. If not this year, then next. Another one of those things for homework for the people who want to do it, the confirmation of covenant with many from Daniel, Old Testament, it starts a 7-year period. Well, this thing that they're talking about in the UN, any guesses on how long this little treaty thing is supposed to be? 7 years.
No, you're kidding me.
I am not kidding at all.
That's going to go live here next month on the 20. It's going to be in October that they're trying to make that go live.
Yep. And it's a 7-year agreement. And then what the Bible says is that someone's going to come into power that's going to confirm an existing covenant with many. And this is debated within theological circles. But what we're supposed to do is be watching, right? So we're seeing all the nations of the planet come together. That seems like a covenant with many to me. And we're seeing what they want to do. A lot of control, a lot of taking things away as far as sovereignty goes. We're already seeing poultry restrictions as far as what you can grow and have in your own yard. I'd be willing to bet that outdoor gardening eventually will probably be pushed into the, that's not good for the environment and therefore you can't do it type of situation. And I mean, they're just going to come after it. And I know that for a lot of people watching, you probably think I'm woo-woo on that one, but man, you just got to open up the good book and see what's going to happen. So I'll stop there, David.
Go and buying loads of gravel and bring it back in and
Yeah.
I can only carry like 1 ton on my pickup truck at a time because gravel,
Oh yeah. My shocks and springs show that you can do a little bit more, but if you go too far, then you need new shocks and springs.
Yeah, my buddy keeps going, put a 4x4 under there. And I'm like, that just sounds kind of hokey. Because I know the guys who used to run moonshine put the 4x4s under there so it didn't appear that their trunks were sagging down.
Oh, yeah.
Or anything was sagging. It looked like it was just an empty truck, although it'd be totally full. But they had 4x4s under the springs under there so to make it appear as if it didn't have a load on it.
Yeah.
Moonshine, that's an old moonshiner trick. But it works for gravel and stuff too.